I don't usually swim in rivers, not because I'm scared or anything, but because growing up in the suburbs, a pool was always just easier. Controlled, clean, predictable. This wasn't that. I was 2 hours from the nearest target, standing ankle deep in the kind of slow-moving river you only see in postcards or on the Instagram feeds of people who drink black coffee and say things like, just passing through. I was definitely not one of those people. I was just trying to clear my head. The breakup had been 2 weeks ago. Or 3. I don't know. I lost track after deleting every photo we ever took together and blocking him on everything. Friends kept telling me to get out of town, change the scenery. So I did. I'd driven upstate to this tiny Airbnb, more of a shack, really, right on the edge of a ranch. No TV, no service. Just trees, wind, and the slow sound of river water lapping against stones. I didn't even bring swim trunks. That's how little I planned to swim. But that morning, something pulled me to the riverbank. I sat there for maybe an hour, watching the way the water curved around boulders and disappeared into the brush. It was hot. The kind of heat that makes your shirt stick to your back after 2 steps. Before I knew it, I was in the water, just boxer briefs, my phone abandoned on a rock. It felt good. Cold, clean, nothing artificial about it. I dunked my head under, pushed myself off the shallows, and started to swim out a little. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to feel like I was finally shaking the city off me. Then I felt it, the shift. Not a current exactly, more like the ground disappeared beneath me. 1 second I was swimming. The next, I was slipping fast into what felt like a sudden drop. My feet couldn't find bottom. My arms slapped at the water, but the cold now bit instead of soothed. I tried to breathe and swallowed river. I barely got out a sound before I went under. There was panic. Pure, stupid panic. The kind that grabs you by the throat and squeezes all logic out. I tried to kick. I couldn't tell which way was up. I remember thinking, this is how I die. Half naked and heartbroken in a damn river. Then something grabbed me. An arm. Hard. Tight around my chest, dragging me upward with a force that didn't make sense. Air. The sky. A voice. Low, with a twang I couldn't place. Breathe, damn it! I coughed, choked, spit river water. We were moving. My head lolled back against someone's shoulder. He was walking us out of the water like I weighed nothing, one arm around my torso, the other under my legs. It took a second for my eyes to clear, for my brain to catch up. He set me down on the sun-hot grass, his hand still on my shoulders. I blinked up at him. Cowboy hat. Button-down shirt soaked and clinging to a broad chest. Jawline rough with stubble. A pair of the bluest eyes I'd ever seen, squinting down at me like he was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't ask for. You good? He asked, one brow raised. I nodded, coughing again. Yeah, I think so. You sure? You look like a fish out of water back there. I tried to laugh, but it came out more like a wheeze. I didn't know it dropped off like that. He smirked, squatting down next to me. Locals know not to go past the second boulder. You must be city. I glanced down at myself, boxers sticking to me, skin covered in goosebumps. Is it that obvious? He chuckled, low and easy. You got the look of someone who doesn't wear boots unless it's ironic. Guilty, I muttered, dragging a hand over my wet face. Thanks, by the way, for pulling me out. He shrugged, then stood up, offering his hand. I took it. His grip was firm, warm despite the wet. He held me up like I weighed nothing. I'm Cody, he said. I caught my breath, brushing water off my arms. Eli. Well, Eli, you're lucky I happened to be riding the fence line when I saw you flailing out there. You ride horses? I asked, a little breathless still, a little fascinated. He smiled like it wasn't a big deal. Most days. There was a beat. Me, standing half naked and soaked in the middle of someone else's field. Him, looking like he stepped out of a Levi's commercial. A bird called somewhere in the trees. The river moved behind us like nothing had happened. You should get dry, he said finally. You'll catch a chill. I nodded, not trusting myself to say anything else. Your place nearby? he asked. Airbnb up the hill, he pointed. The one with the busted swing on the porch? Yeah. I live about a mile past that, if you need anything. Towels? Maybe a shirt that ain't clinging to every part of you. I flushed. His smile turned a little crooked, like he enjoyed catching me off guard. I'll be around, he said, turning to head back toward the trees where, apparently, his horse was tied. Thanks again, I called after him. He tipped his hat without turning back. Try not to drown next time, city boy. And just like that, he disappeared behind the trees. But he left something behind, an itch in my chest I hadn't felt in months, something warm and dangerous and alive. I dried off fast after Cody disappeared. Sun does that in places like this. Still, the air felt cooler without him around. Not colder, just less. I walked back to the shack, wrapped in a towel I found stuffed under my bed, and sat on the porch swing, the one with the broken armrest Cody had mentioned. It creaked like it was about to give out, but I didn't care. My legs were still a little shaky, though I told myself it was from the near drowning and not the cowboy who pulled me out. I couldn't stop replaying it. The way he looked at me, like I was some kind of question he didn't mind figuring out. The strength in his arms, the ease with which he carried me like I weighed less than his saddle. And that voice, soft but edged with authority. I kept expecting the adrenaline to wear off, for reality to sink in. But instead, the memory of his hand gripping my side just kept looping in my head. I was a mess. I'd come out here to get away from drama, and I'd managed to almost drown and get saved by a cowboy who looked like he belonged in a damn cologne ad. I was still sitting there when I heard hooves. At first, I thought I imagined it, some old Western fantasy my brain cooked up. But then I saw him again, riding down the dirt path toward the shack, like it was the most normal thing in the world. No urgency, just a casual sway in his saddle, reins loose in one hand. Cody. He pulled up right by the steps, boots hitting the ground with a dusty thud. You always sit around in towels, or is this a special occasion? He asked. I stood up fast, which only made the towel drop a little too low on my hips. Oh, I didn't exactly pack for river rescues. He didn't look away, just smirked. Figured that, so I brought you something. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a folded flannel shirt and a pair of jeans. Worn, but clean. They might be a bit big, he said, handing them over, but I figure it beats flashing the wildlife. Thanks, I said, trying not to let my fingers linger when they brushed his. That's really thoughtful. He shrugged like it was nothing. My grandma raised me right. Where'd you grow up? I asked, stepping back onto the porch, the towel still clutched tight. Texas. Moved out here a few years ago. Bought a bit of land, started working fence lines, doing some ranch hand stuff, less drama than back home. That word again. Drama. Yeah, same reason I'm here, I said, looking out toward the trees. Needed to get away. He tilted his head, resting one hand on the saddle horn. City stuff? I nodded. Breakup. Messy. Loud. Figured I'd drown my sorrows in silence and maybe some whiskey. Just didn't think I'd almost literally drown. That made him laugh. Short, warm, real. Well, I'd say the river's got your number, he said. Good thing I was passing through. I paused, unsure if I should say it, but it came out anyway. You didn't have to stop. He looked at me for a beat longer than necessary. Guess I didn't. Something tightened in my chest. It wasn't just gratitude. There was something else unspoken hanging in the air between us. But before I could push it or ruin it, Cody cleared his throat and turned toward his horse. Anyway, he said, swinging back into the saddle, I'll let you get dressed. But if you're bored later, I could use a hand stacking some hay. Not exactly fun, but it's honest work. Gets your mind off stuff. I hesitated. You sure? He gave me that same easy smirk. You look like you could use something to keep you busy. And with that, he rode off again, just as calm and collected as the first time. I stood there for a long moment, holding the borrowed clothes and wondering what the hell I'd just agreed to. Hay stacking? Me? I could barely carry a Trader Joe's bag up 2 flights of stairs. But there was something about him, about this place, that made me want to say yes to things I'd usually laugh at. Maybe it was his voice, or the way his eyes didn't flinch when they looked at me. Or maybe it was because for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel completely hollow inside. I changed fast. The clothes surprisingly comfortable. Loose, yeah, but warm and soft from years of use. They smelled faintly like cedar and something else I couldn't quite place. By the time I got to the barn, the sun had started its slow descent, turning everything gold. Cody was already inside, shirt half unbuttoned, arms flexing as he moved bales from one corner to another like it was nothing. "Wasn't sure you'd show," he said when he saw me. I shrugged. "Didn't want to let your shirt go to waste." He laughed, wiping sweat from his brow with his forearm. "You ever handled hay before?" I looked at the massive bales stacked high. "Do gym mats count?" "Nope." "Then no." "Well," he said, tossing me a pair of gloves, "we'll start slow." And that's how I spent the next hour, sweaty, sore, and laughing more than I had in weeks. Cody wasn't much of a talker, but every now and then he'd toss a comment my way, something sarcastic but good-natured. I didn't mind the silence between. It felt easy. By the time we finished, the sky was pink and orange, and the only sound was the occasional chirp of crickets. I leaned against a post, wiping sweat off my neck. "You did good," Cody said, pulling off his gloves. "Yeah, I'll put haystacker on my resume." He smirked again, that same crooked smile that always made my stomach flip a little. "You hungry?" he asked. I nodded, too tired to pretend otherwise. "Come on," he said. "I'll make us something. Hope you like chili." I followed him out of the barn, watching the way his shoulders moved under the fabric of his half-open shirt. The sun caught the edge of his hat, casting a golden halo around him. I should have been exhausted, but I wasn't. I was lit up in all the wrong, or maybe right, places. And something told me as I followed him toward his cabin that I wasn't just walking into dinner. I was walking into something else entirely. Cody's place wasn't big, but it was built with purpose. A wide, low porch, sturdy wooden beams, everything inside smelled like wood smoke and coffee grounds. A fan spun lazily overhead, doing very little to cool the space, but I didn't mind. There was something about him, that made me want to stay anyway. He pointed toward a small table by the window. "Sit. You've earned it." I dropped into the chair, my whole body sore but buzzing. Cody moved around the kitchen like he'd done it 1,000 times, which he probably had. He chopped onions with the kind of casual efficiency that made me think he was used to doing things alone. "You ever cook?" he asked over his shoulder. "Sure. I mean, by city standards. I can microwave the hell out of a frozen lasagna." He laughed, turning to look at me with one eyebrow raised. "Gourmet. I contain multitudes." That got a real smile out of him, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes. God, those eyes. Every time he looked at me for longer than a second, it felt like he could see stuff I didn't even want to admit was in me. The smell of chili started filling the space. Spicy, rich, comforting. I watched him work, the way his forearms flexed when he stirred the pot, the way his shirt clung to his back from the day's sweat. He caught me looking once, didn't say anything, just gave me a quick smirk and went back to what he was doing. It was maddening. The way he didn't push, didn't flirt. Not directly, but somehow everything he did felt like an invitation. He set a bowl in front of me, slid a spoon into it, and sat down across from me with his own. We ate in comfortable silence for a while. The only sound was the clink of spoons and the occasional creak of the fan above. "Good?" he asked. I nodded, still chewing. I don't say this lightly, but better than Trader Joe's. "That's the highest praise a city boy can give," he teased, leaning back in his chair. "Don't get used to it." I shot back, smiling. He tilted his head, studying me for a second. "You always this sarcastic?" I shrugged. "Only when I'm not drowning." That earned a soft laugh, and for a moment, the air changed. It got quieter somehow. Tighter. His gaze didn't leave mine. "You scared me," he said after a beat. I blinked. "What?" "Back there in the water. I thought—" He stopped, glanced down at his bowl like it had suddenly become very interesting. I thought I was too late. I sat there, unsure what to say. I'm not good with moments, he admitted, voice low. Neither am I said. But I'm glad you were there. He looked up, eyes meeting mine again. This time, softer. Something unspoken passed between us. Something neither of us had the guts to name just yet. He stood first, clearing the bowls, rinsing them in the tiny sink. I got up to help, but he waved me off. Nah, you stacked hay. That's payment enough. I lingered awkwardly, unsure if I should leave or sit or thank him again for the 10th time. You need a ride back? He asked. I can walk. It's getting dark. I don't mind. He looked at me again, then nodded once. All right, but if you don't show up for coffee tomorrow morning, I'm riding up there and checking the river. I smiled. Is that your version of flirting? He smirked. You'll know when I'm flirting. There was a pause, a long one. I think I already do. He didn't say anything, just watched me, that same unreadable look in his eyes that made my heart thud hard. I stepped toward the door, hands stuffed in the borrowed jeans, pockets. Thanks again, for everything. Anytime, Eli. I left before I could overthink it. The walk back was slow, my boots kicking up dust, the night creeping in around the edges. Crickets sang. The stars were coming out, one by one. I couldn't stop smiling. Something had shifted tonight. I didn't know exactly what it meant yet, but I knew this wasn't over, not even close. I barely slept that night. It wasn't the unfamiliar bed or the old ceiling fan clicking overhead. It was the way Cody had looked at me, right at me, as if he saw through all the noise I carried inside. It was the sound of his laugh still ringing in my ears, the heat of his kitchen, the way he said my name like it wasn't just another name. Eli. I heard it again and again. I woke up early, maybe 5 or 6, the sky still bruised with pre-dawn light. I sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, sipping the world's worst instant coffee. My legs ached from the hay. My shoulders were tight, but my chest, that was a whole different ache. He said coffee, right? I almost didn't go. Told myself maybe it was just small-town kindness, that I was reading too much into it. But when 9 rolled around and I still hadn't heard a horse or a knock, I got restless. By 10, I was walking back down the dirt path. Cody's cabin looked different in the morning. Warmer, somehow, like it belonged in the light. The door was open, so I knocked on the frame and peeked in. He was in the kitchen, shirtless, wearing just jeans and a mug in one hand. I was starting to think you drowned in the shower, he said. I considered it, I replied. But your coffee smelled better than mine, he waved me in. Help yourself. I poured a cup, the pot already full and hot. No fancy creamer. Just a chipped mug and something strong enough to keep a rancher on his feet. We sipped in silence for a minute. It wasn't awkward. If anything, it felt too easy. You sleep okay? He asked eventually. I nodded. Eventually, he leaned against the counter, arms crossed over his chest. The way the morning sun hit him made every line of his torso stand out like a sculpture. I tried not to stare. Failed. You always this tense? He asked, teasing. I'm not tense, I lied. He took a slow sip from his mug, then set it down. Come on, I got something to show you. Before I could ask what, he was already heading for the door. I followed, coffee in hand. We walked past the barn, past the fence line, down a slope that opened into a wide meadow. The grass was tall, golden, and moving in waves with the wind. And in the middle of it all stood a horse, big, chestnut-colored, with a dark mane and curious eyes. This is Samson, Cody said, walking right up to him. You ever ride? I blinked. Like a horse? No, a shopping cart, he deadpanned. Yes, a horse. I laughed, more out of nerves than humor. I mean, not really. I think I did once on a school trip. He gave me a look. Well, you're about to do it again. Cody, you scared? Not scared. Just city. He grinned. You'll live. and before I could talk myself out of it, he boosted me up, his hands on my waist, lifting me like I weighed nothing. I sat there stiff as a board while he mounted behind me, his chest flush against my back, one arm reaching past to take the reins. "This okay?" he asked, voice right by my ear. I nodded, couldn't speak. "Good. Just relax." The horse moved forward, slow and steady. The sway of the saddle, the warmth of his body behind mine. It was all too much, and not enough at the same time. His hand stayed on the reins, but every now and then, his other hand would rest lightly on my thigh, guiding, steadying. We rode through the meadow, neither of us speaking. Just the wind and the sound of hooves in grass. Finally, we stopped at a ridge that overlooked the river, the same one he'd pulled me from yesterday. "Looks different from up here," he said. "It does," I agreed. "Less deadly." He chuckled softly, and I felt it in my back. "You know," he said, "I'm not usually the rescue type." I looked over my shoulder, surprised. "No." He shook his head. "I keep to myself, do my work, don't really get involved." "Then why'd you stop?" He looked at me, really looked, and shrugged. Didn't feel right to just keep riding. Something passed between us then. Something heavier than the morning breeze, thicker than the silence we shared. He didn't say anything else, just turned the horse around and rode us back. When we reached the barn, he helped me down, his hands lingering a second longer this time. I stepped back, unsure what to say, unsure what I wanted to say. "You want to come back for dinner again?" he asked casually, brushing a strand of hay off his jeans. I nodded. "Yeah, I do. I'll make something better than chili this time." "No complaints from me," I said, already feeling the itch to be around him again. As I turned to head back up the trail, he called out, "Hey, Eli." I stopped, looked back. His expression was unreadable again, that same mix of confidence and hesitation I was starting to recognize as uniquely him. "You looked good on that horse." I laughed, shaking my head. "I probably looked terrified." "That too," he said, smirking, "but still good." And with that, he disappeared back into the barn like he hadn't just made my entire chest light up. I spent the rest of the afternoon doing nothing. The kind of nothing you only get away with in places like this. I sat on the porch of the shack, read half a chapter of a book I wasn't really into, then dozed off to the sound of insects buzzing in the tall grass. But my mind wasn't quiet. It kept going back to the way Cody had looked at me. Really looked. The weight of it. Like I wasn't just passing through, like I was something he might want to keep around. And the way his chest pressed against my back on the horse, I couldn't stop thinking about that. How it felt both protective and intimate, even though neither of us said a word about it. By sunset, I'd showered and changed into the cleanest clothes I had left. I didn't want to overthink it, but I still ran a hand through my hair a few more times than necessary. I even hesitated at the door, wondering if showing up early made me seem too eager. But Cody was already outside when I arrived. He was at the grill this time, flipping something that smelled way better than chili. No shirt again, just jeans and a backward baseball cap. A cold beer sat sweating on the railing beside him. "You're early," he said when he spotted me. "Could say the same to you," I replied, eyeing the steaks. "Figured I'd feed you something that didn't come out of a can this time." "Well, you've officially raised the bar." He handed me a beer without asking if I wanted one. "Just new." I took a sip and leaned against the porch railing next to him. "You always cook shirtless. Or is this part of the ranch hospitality?" He grinned. "Only when I've got company worth showing off for." I nearly choked on the beer. He didn't even flinch, just flipped the steaks and looked over his shoulder like it was nothing. "Relax," he said. "You don't scare easy, do you? I nearly drowned in your river, remember? Everything else feels manageable now." He laughed. "Fair." We ate on the porch, paper plates, bare feet, dusk creeping in around us. He lit a citronella candle that didn't really help, but the smell was oddly comforting. Conversation came easy. We talked about nothing. Childhood injuries, favorite cereals, weird job stories. But under it all, there was a current, a low hum of something neither of us said outright. After we cleared the plates, we didn't move inside, just sat there, watching the sky go from orange to purple to black. "You ever think about not going back?" he asked suddenly. I looked over. "To the city?" He nodded. "All the time," I admitted, but then I remember I don't know how to fix a fence or ride a horse without clinging like a tourist. "You're not that bad," I snorted. "You're just being nice." "No," he said, tone more serious. "I mean it. You fit here more than you think." That hung between us. Heavy. Honest. "Is that a compliment or a warning?" I asked. He turned to face me fully now, one arm resting on the back of my chair. "Guess it depends on what you want it to be." I looked at him. Really looked. The lines of his jaw, the stubble catching in the candlelight, the way his lips were parted slightly, like he was waiting for something, maybe even hoping for it. "I don't really know what I want," I said, barely above a whisper. "That's okay," he replied. "You don't have to figure it all out tonight." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. If anything, it felt like permission to stay, to breathe, to not know. He stood eventually, collecting the bottles and plates. I helped without thinking, following him back into the kitchen. We moved around each other like we'd done it 100 times. When the sink was empty and the counters wiped down, he leaned against the counter and looked at me again. That same intense, unreadable gaze. "You staying long?" "I booked the place for another week." He nodded. "Good." I could feel the space between us shrinking by the second. Then he took a small step closer. I didn't move. "Eli," he said quietly, "you're not just passing through for me. You know that, right?" My heart skipped. "Cody." He didn't wait. He stepped fully into my space, one hand finding my waist like it had always belonged there. His other hand brushed my cheek, tentative, waiting for me to pull back. I didn't. I leaned in. His lips found mine in a way that felt inevitable. Slow, steady, firm. It wasn't rushed or desperate. It was sure, like he'd been thinking about this for a while. Like we both had. When we finally pulled apart, I exhaled the breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "I've wanted to do that since I saw you standing in the river," he murmured. I smiled. "Even when I was half drowning?" "Especially then." He didn't let go of me, just rested his forehead against mine like he wasn't ready to break the contact yet. Neither was I. "Stay for a while," he said. "I've got a week." He looked at me. That's a start. The kiss changed something, but not in a bad way. There wasn't some big dramatic shift, no movie-style montage of us riding horses side by side or lying shirtless in a field. It was subtler than that, more real. It was how Cody handed me a clean towel the next morning without a word, like I had always been part of the routine. How he poured 2 mugs of coffee instead of 1. How his hand brushed mine when we both reached for the same apple, and neither of us pulled away. There was no label, no explanation, but we kept orbiting closer. On the 3rd morning after that first kiss, we rode out again, this time with me on my own horse, kind of. Samson had apparently taken to me, which I assumed was code for he's too chill to throw you off when you panic. Cody rode beside me, patient and quiet. We didn't talk much, but it was never awkward. Cody didn't fill silences just to hear himself speak, and I appreciated that. There was something grounding about his presence. Like if I said something ridiculous, he wouldn't laugh. He'd just nod and wait for me to get to the real point. We stopped at a bluff that overlooked the edge of the ranch. The valley below was all shades of green and gold, scattered with fences and slow-moving cattle. It was the kind of view that made time feel like it didn't matter. "This is my favorite spot," he said, swinging off his horse. I followed, my thighs already regretting the saddle time. "You ever think about what your life would have looked like if you'd grown up out here?" he asked, sitting in the grass, knees up, arms draped over them. "All the time," I admitted, sitting beside him. "But I probably wouldn't be me." He nodded. "Maybe. Or maybe you'd just be a quieter version." "I don't think I'd hate that," I said, glancing sideways at him. He looked over at me for a long second, then reached for my hand, his fingers lacing with mine like it was no big deal. It was a big deal. "Me neither," he said. That afternoon, we barely talked. We just lay there, the sun climbing high above us, hands still tangled together. His thumb occasionally brushed the side of mine, small, steady reminders that I wasn't imagining any of this. That night, I stayed at his cabin. It wasn't planned. I'd gone over for dinner again, ended up helping him with a broken water pipe out near the barn. He taught me how to shut off the valve, what tools to use. I felt weirdly proud of that, like I'd finally earned a point in whatever slow, silent game we were playing. When it got dark, he didn't ask if I was going back. I didn't say I was. At some point, he handed me a blanket and we settled on the couch, the local radio playing something bluesy in the background. He rested his head back, eyes half closed. "Can I ask you something?" I said after a while. "Shoot. What do people here think about guys like us?" He was quiet for a beat. Then, "Most don't think at all. Some know, some guess, some pretend they don't." "And you?" He glanced over. "I don't advertise, but I don't lie either. I just live." That sat heavy in my chest. "You ever had someone out here before?" I asked. He looked at me. "Not like this." That reply hit me harder than I expected. I leaned in, pressing my forehead to his shoulder. He didn't move away, just let his head rest lightly against mine. "This scares the shit out of me," I admitted quietly. "Me too." We stayed like that until the radio switched to static and the candle burned out. Eventually, I fell asleep on his chest, one arm slung over his stomach, his breath steady and grounding under me. In the quiet of that room, something settled in me. A part one didn't realize had been clenching for months, maybe years, finally exhaled. I thought the last few days would be the hardest. The tension, the questions, the slow gravity of figuring out what Cody and I were doing. But those were easy compared to the last day. My time at the shack was up. The reservation ended, the owner messaged to ask if I'd left the key in the box. Reality was calling. I stood outside Cody's barn that morning, watching him tighten a fence post like it was just another Tuesday. Because for him, it was. I wasn't sure how to bring it up. "Hey, I'm leaving. Thanks for the life-changing horse rides and the hot kisses and making me feel something again." None of it felt right. He glanced up, sensing me before I said anything, wiped his hands on a rag. Walked over. "You heading out?" I nodded. "Yeah. Can't dodge my life forever, apparently." He gave a soft smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You ever think you'd come back?" he asked. That caught me off guard. "Do you want me to?" I wouldn't have asked if I didn't. We stood there in the dirt, surrounded by hay bales and sun, and the kind of silence that had come to feel like hours. "Cody," I said, voice low, whatever this is, it's real. But I don't want to screw it up by pretending I know what to do next." He nodded. "You don't have to. Just don't disappear, all right?" I reached for his hand, not caring if anyone saw. His fingers curled around mine like they'd been waiting for that all morning. "I won't," I said. He stepped closer, leaned in, kissed me like it was just another part of the day, like it belonged in the rhythm of feeding horses and fixing fences and watching the sun rise over a ridge. "I mean it," he said against my lips. "You've got a place here. Whether it's now or later, you've got it." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "You make it sound easy." "It's not," he said, "but it's worth it." He helped load my bag into the car, then stood there as I started the engine, hands on his hips, a quiet weight in his eyes. I rolled down the window. "You gonna be here next time I show up?" "Only if you're coming to stay longer," he said with that same crooked grin. I smiled. "We'll see." He tapped the side of the car lightly. "Drive safe, city boy." And then he stepped back, the gravel crunching under his boots as I pulled away. I didn't look in the rear view right away. I couldn't. But when I did, he was still standing there, hat tipped low, shirt unbuttoned, watching me go, not waiting, just trusting I'd come back.